Humanity Repays a Debt, and the Entire Galaxy Trembles in Fear Part 1. The Summoning. The massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Council's Grand Chamber stretched overhead like an artificial sky, its facets reflecting the hundreds of alien representatives seated in concentric rings. At the center stood Admiral Marcus Rivera of the United Earth Fleet O, alone, unarmed, and somehow still the most dangerous being in the room. "You have violated Protocol 773B by entering restricted space," boomed High Counselor Varix, his translucent tentacles rippling with bioluminescent anger. "The hegemony worlds are forbidden to all species without direct invitation." Marcus stood perfectly still, his weathered face betraying nothing. Behind him on the massive viewscreen, a fleet of Earth vessels hovered in formation around a dying star exactly where they shouldn't be. "The penalty," continued Varix, "is immediate quarantine of your homeworld and dissolution of your species' interstellar privileges." The chamber erupted in murmurs of approval from 100 alien throats. Marcus finally spoke, his voice unexpectedly soft. "With respect, Counselor, we were invited." Confusion rippled through the chamber. "By whom?" demanded Varix. Marcus activated his wrist display, projecting a three-dimensional message into the chamber's center. An alien script scrolled, ancient and formal, bearing seals that made several council members rise in shock. "By the Nox Tari. 300 years ago." Marcus stepped forward. "And we've come to repay our debt." The oldest member of the council, a being so ancient its species was nearly forgotten, sank deeper into its suspension fluid. "Impossible," it whispered through its translator. "The Nox Tari disappeared 5,000 years before humans achieved spaceflight." "Yes," said Marcus, his eyes glinting with something that made even the predatory species in the chamber grow still. "That's what makes it interesting." The ancient counselor's suspension fluid began to bubble with agitation. "Human, do you understand what you're claiming? The Nox Tari were the architects of the early galaxy. If they called in a debt bomb—" "They didn't call it in," Marcus interrupted. "We found them. What's left of them?" He gestured, and the view screen changed to show a massive construct hidden within the corona of the dying star. "And we intend to fulfill our obligation." "What obligation could you possibly have to a species that vanished before your ancestors crawled from the oceans?" snarled a reptilian delegate. Marcus smiled. "And somehow that's the most terrifying thing yet." "To wake them up." A roar of outrage filled the chamber. Counselor Varix slammed his appendage against the podium, sending a shockwave of sound that silenced the uproar. "This is madness," Varix hissed. "The Nox Tari were dangerous manipulators who nearly destroyed the early galaxy with their experiments." Lieutenant Nadia Torres watched the proceedings from the bridge of the Earth flagship Prometheus, orbiting the dying star. Her dark eyes narrowed as she monitored the Admiral's vital signs through their neural link. His pulse remained steady, almost meditative. "He's enjoying this," she murmured to the ship's tactical officer, Commander Jackson. "They're reacting exactly as predicted." Jackson nodded, his attention split between her and the massive stellar construct that had begun to pulse with energy. "How much longer before the activation sequence completes?" Nadia checked her display. 17 minutes. The Admiral needs to keep them talking just a little longer. Back in the council chamber, Marcus stood calmly as accusations flew from all sides. The amphibious Tellurian representative rose on its hind legs, towering over its neighbors. "The historical records show that the Nox Tari conducted genetic experiments on primitive species," it gurgled through a moisture mask. "Are you claiming they tampered with human evolution?" Marcus nodded. "Precisely. 6 artifacts were discovered in Earth's most ancient ruins, objects that predated human civilization by at least 1 million years. He brought up new images on the display, objects that contained genetic markers that matched perfectly with certain sequences in the human genome. Dr. Elias Okafor, the xenoarchaeologist who had first deciphered the Nox Tari language, stood nervously in the observation deck above the council floor. He'd insisted on coming despite the danger. Now, as he watched Marcus reveal their discoveries, he felt a mixture of pride and terror. What they were about to do would change everything. The ancient counselor's translator crackled. "The Nox Tari planned for your evolution. They seeded your world with genetic triggers that would one day produce specific cognitive abilities." It paused, its ancient eyes focusing on Marcus with new intensity. What abilities, human? Before Marcus could answer, alarms blared throughout the chamber. A junior aide rushed to Counselor Varix, whispering urgently. Varix's bioluminescence flared with shock. Your fleet is activating the construct. This discussion was merely a distraction. Marcus smiled again. Not a distraction, Counselor. A courtesy. We came to inform you of what's about to happen, not to ask permission. Stop this immediately, Varix thundered. The Council officially declares humanity a threat to galactic stability. All member species are ordered to mobilize defensive forces. You misunderstand, Marcus interrupted, his voice still calm. We're not attacking you. We're fulfilling an obligation that was encoded into our DNA long before we knew you existed. The view screen behind him suddenly blazed with light as energy surged through the stellar construct. The dying star began to pulse rhythmically, its corona swirling into new patterns. What have you done? Whispered the ancient counselor. We've woken them, Marcus replied. Just one, actually. To start. On the Prometheus, Nadia watched as the construct opened like an enormous flower, revealing a spherical chamber at its heart. Inside, something was moving. Energy readings are off the charts, Jackson reported. Whatever was in stasis is definitely awake now. Nadia touched her neural link. Admiral, it worked. We have confirmation of life signs. In the council chamber, Marcus received the message and allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. He turned back to the horrified council. The Noxtari weren't destroyed, he explained. They placed themselves in stasis when they realized certain races, your ancestors, ours, were determined to overthrow them. They scattered their stasis chambers throughout the galaxy, hidden in places no one would look. And they created ULSRAL modified early humans to eventually find and revive them. This is an act of war, Varix declared, but his voice had lost some of its authority. Fear was setting in. No, Marcus countered. It's an act of birth. The Noxtari created us to be their caretakers, not their soldiers. The chamber fell silent as the view screen showed a small shuttle departing from the construct. It moved with impossible grace, its hull shimmering with technology far beyond anything currently known to the galactic community. 3 minutes to docking. Nadia's voice came through Marcus's neural link. Counselors, Marcus addressed the stunned assembly. In 3 minutes, you will meet the last of the Noxtari architects. I suggest you prepare yourselves. Dr. Okafor hurried down from the observation deck. He needed to be present for this historic moment. As he reached the council floor, he caught Marcus's eye and received a slight nod in return. They had done it. After decades of work, they had fulfilled the first part of humanity's ancient obligation. The shuttle docked at the Grand Chamber's primary airlock. Guards moved into position, weapons drawn despite orders to stand down. Everyone, even the oldest counselors, held their breath. The airlock cycled open. A single figure emerged, tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shift between translucence and solidity. Its eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, swept the chamber with an intelligence that felt ancient and overwhelming. I am Ixil, the being said, its voice somehow understood by all present without need for translation. Last of the architects. I have slept for 50,000 years. It turned to Marcus and inclined its head slightly. The caretakers have fulfilled their purpose. The debt begins to be repaid. Marcus bowed deeply. Welcome back to the galaxy, Architect. Humanity stands ready to serve. As Ixil stepped fully into the chamber, the lights dimmed momentarily, as if the very technology of the council headquarters responded to its presence. When illumination returned, the being stood in the center of the chamber, regarding the council members with something between curiosity and disappointment. So, it said, these are the descendants of those who sought to undo our work. It made a gesture, and suddenly the council's master display filled with images from across the galaxy. Worlds in conflict, species driven to extinction, civilizations collapsed into barbarism. You have not proven yourselves better stewards than we were. The ancient counselor slipped from its suspension entirely, prostrating itself before the Noxtari. We know of your powers, Architect. We beg for mercy. Ixil regarded the ancient being dispassionately. Mercy is a concept invented by the weak to appeal to the strong. We Noxtari prefer purpose. It turned to Marcus. The true awakening begins now. The first debt is repaid, but the greater obligation remains. As the council chamber erupted into chaos, Marcus exchanged a glance with Dr. Okafor. This was only the beginning. Whatever the Noxtari had planned for humanity, whatever debt they still had to repay, one thing was clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. And as the first part of a plan set in motion 50,000 years ago finally came Humanity repays a debt, and the entire galaxy trembles in fear. Part 2. The awakening, the stellar construct pulsed with blinding energy as it transformed the dying star into something new. From the observation deck of the Earth flagship Prometheus, Lieutenant Nadia Torres watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The star's corona twisted into impossible patterns, forming channels that fed directly into the ancient Noxtari technology. "It's beautiful," she whispered, placing her hand against the reinforced viewport. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood beside her, his face illuminated by the transformed star's glow. Beauty and terror side by side. The Noxtari always understood that balance. Behind them, Dr. Elias Okafor paced nervously. The xenoarchaeologist had spent the last 15 years of his life deciphering the Noxtari language and uncovering humanity's debt to the ancient race. Now that Ixil had awakened, Okafor found himself filled with doubts. "The Council is mobilizing their fleets," Nadia reported, checking her tactical display. 17 battle groups from 9 different member species. "They're forming a blockade around this entire sector." Marcus seemed unconcerned. "As expected." "Expected?" Okafor's voice cracked. "Admiral, we're facing the combined military might of virtually every advanced civilization in the galaxy." "This isn't what we planned for." "It's exactly what we planned for," Marcus replied calmly. "The Council fears what it doesn't control. We knew they would respond with force. That's why we needed to wake Ixil first." As if summoned by the mention of its name, the door to the observation deck slid open. Ixil entered, its translucent form seeming to gather the light from the transformed star. The 4 diamond-arranged eyes surveyed the humans with ancient intelligence. "Your species has evolved remarkably well," Ixil said, its voice bypassing their ears and appearing directly in their minds. "The genetic markers we placed have expressed themselves precisely as designed." Okafor stepped forward, unable to contain his questions any longer. "Why did you choose humans?" "There must have been other species with more potential." Ixil's form rippled, a gesture that might have been amusement. "Potential is not merely about intelligence, Doctor. Your kind possessed something rare. Adaptability paired with empathy. Most species excel at one or the other." "And this debt we owe you," Marcus interjected. "We need to understand it fully now." "Yes," Ixil agreed. "The time for partial knowledge has passed." The being gestured, and suddenly the observation deck disappeared around them. They found themselves standing in what appeared to be a vast library, with information flowing like liquid through translucent channels. "A simulation," Ixil explained, "drawn from my memories. Behold the Noxtari at our height." The library transformed into a view of the galaxy as it had been 50,000 years ago. Thousands of worlds glowed with the same energy signature as the stellar construct, forming an intricate network across space. "We were the first sentient species to achieve interstellar travel," Ixil continued. "We found a galaxy teeming with life but lacking in consciousness. So we began our great work of guiding evolution on countless worlds." The display shifted, showing various primitive species being subtly modified through Noxtari intervention. "You played God," Nadia said, her voice hushed. "We played gardener," Ixil corrected, cultivating consciousness where it showed promise. The scene changed again, this time showing conflict. Other advanced species, dust early ancestors of current council races, are rising up against the Noxtari. "Not all appreciated our guidance," Ixil said, a note of bitterness entering its mental voice. "Many believed they should have evolved naturally without intervention. A rebellion formed. We were vastly more advanced, but they had numbers and desperation. They watched as Noxtari worlds fell one by one, their technology captured or destroyed. Rather than fight a war that would devastate the galaxy, we chose another path. We went into stasis, hiding our chambers in places no one would think to look: our dying stars, gas giant cores, the space between dimensions. But before we slept, we set in motion our final project." The view shifted to ancient Earth, showing early humans. Okafor gasped as he saw Noxtari ships descending, modifying the genetic code of these primitive ancestors. You were our insurance, Ixil said. Designed to evolve specific cognitive abilities that would one day allow you to find us, to wake us when the time was right. And that time is now? Marcus asked. Yes. Because the greater threat has grown too strong to ignore. Ixil waved a hand and the simulation dissolved, returning them to the observation deck. But first I must understand what you have become. Without warning, Ixil placed a slender hand on Marcus's forehead. The Admiral stiffened but didn't resist. Your history, so much conflict, such rapid advancement. Ixil's voice sounded almost surprised. Your species nearly destroyed itself multiple times yet somehow found unity. Fascinating. When Ixil removed its hand, Marcus swayed slightly. Nadia moved to support him, her expression concerned. I'm fine, Marcus assured her. Just disorienting. Ixil turned to a nearby console and without touching it began interfacing with the ship's computer. Information flowed at impossible speeds as the ancient being absorbed Earth's history, science, culture, and current status in the galactic community. You've achieved much in a short time, Ixil observed. From planet-bound to interstellar in less than 5 centuries. The genetic markers accelerated your cognitive development as planned. What markers? Okafor demanded. What exactly did you do to us? Enhanced pattern recognition, improved spatial reasoning, accelerated neural adaptation. Ixil listed the modifications dispassionately. But most importantly, we gave you the ability to perceive connections others cannot. What you might call intuition or insight. The ability to make conceptual leaps. A communication alert chimed. Admiral, the ship's AI announced, the Galactic Council is demanding our immediate surrender. They've given us 1 standard hour before they open fire. Marcus sighed. So much for diplomacy. They fear what they do not understand, Ixil said. And they are right to fear. When my brethren awaken, more of you? Nadia interrupted. How many? 12 stasis chambers were hidden throughout this galaxy, Ixil replied, each containing one of the High Architects. Together we can restore what was lost. Marcus and Nadia exchanged glances. This wasn't part of their understanding. They had expected to wake one Noxtari, not 12 of the most powerful beings in galactic history. The Council races will see this as an existential threat, Okafor pointed out. They'll stop at nothing to prevent more awakenings. Their ancestors tried to destroy us once before, Ixil said, a cold edge entering its mental voice. They failed. History repeats. The ship shuddered suddenly as a warning shot passed near the hull. They're not waiting the full hour, Nadia reported, checking her tactical display. Multiple ships moving into attack formation. Return fire? Asked the weapons officer over the comm. Marcus hesitated, looking to Ixil. We didn't come here to start a war. No, Ixil agreed. You came to repay a debt. The being moved to the center of the room, raising its arms toward the viewport and the transformed star beyond. Watch. The star pulsed once, twice, and then a wave of energy burst outward. It passed through the Prometheus without effect. But when it reached the Council ships, their systems went dark immediately. The entire blockade fleet drifted, powerless. I have temporarily disabled their technology, Ixil explained. No permanent damage. Merely a demonstration. Of power, Marcus said quietly. Of mercy, Ixil corrected. Had I wished, their ships could have been atomized. Okafor stepped closer to Ixil, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. The artifacts we found on Earth, they weren't just messages, were they? They were keys, yes, Doctor. Genetic keys that would activate only when humanity reached the necessary level of development. When the final key activated in your Dr. Ambrose 30 years ago, the path to finding our stasis chambers was revealed. Dr. Ambrose's breakthrough on quantum entanglement communication, Nadia realized. That's what led us to the first Noxtari artifact. Precisely, Ixil confirmed. And now we must proceed to the next phase. The other architects must be awakened. Wait, Marcus held up a hand. Before we commit to that, we need to understand the full scope of this debt. What exactly do the Noxtari expect from humanity? Ixil's 4 eyes fixed on Marcus with sudden intensity. The debt is not what we expect from you, Admiral. It is what we did for you. Without our intervention, humanity would have remained primitive for millions of years more if you survived at all. So we owe you our civilization, Our technology? Our very existence? Okafor asked in a sense. But the debt goes deeper. Ixil gestured and a new image appeared in the air between them. A vast shadowy construct floating in the void between galaxies. We created humanity for a purpose. To help us continue our most important work guarding the void gates. Void gates? Nadia repeated. Portals to dimensions beyond your comprehension, Ixil explained. Sealed by Noxtari technology eons ago to protect this reality from entities that would consume it. The rebellion disrupted our guardianship. For 50,000 years the gates have been unmaintained. A chill ran through the room as the implications sank in. Humanity repays a debt, and the entire galaxy trembles in Fear Part 3. The revelation, Grand Admiral Telos of the Galactic Council Defense Force stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching with barely contained rage as the human vessels maneuvered around his disabled fleet. The pride of 9 civilizations saw 300 warships representing the most advanced technology in known space drifted helpless in the void. How? He demanded, slamming his armored fist against a darkened console. How did they disable every system simultaneously? His second-in-command, a tall Volaran with iridescent scales, kept her composure. Unknown, Admiral. Our technicians report no physical damage to any systems. It's as if the energy simply departed. Not the humans, Telos growled. The Noxtari. He spat the ancient name like a curse. The Council archives warned us of their power. The main view screen flickered to life, the only system still functioning on the bridge. Admiral Marcus Rivera's face appeared, his expression serious but not triumphant. Grand Admiral Telos, he greeted formally. Your ships will regain power in approximately 10 minutes. This demonstration was not an act of war, but a request for patience. Telos's 4 eyes narrowed. You wake ancient beings of immense power against explicit council prohibition, and you speak of patience? We face a greater threat than ancient rivalries, Marcus replied. The void gates are failing. A visible shudder ran through the Volaran officer. Even Telos, hardened by centuries of military service, felt a cold dread at those words. Impossible, he whispered. The gates are a myth. A story to frighten children. I assure you they are quite real, came another voice as Ixil moved into view beside Marcus. And they are failing because your ancestors overthrew those tasked with maintaining them. Telos straightened his massive frame. If what you say is true, then this changes nothing. The Council must take control of this situation. The Council lacks both the knowledge and the capability, Ixil replied coldly. But humanity possesses both once properly awakened to their purpose. Before Telos could respond, the communication ended. He turned to his second-in-command, his decision made. The moment systems restore, transmit emergency protocol Omega-9 to all Council worlds. We are facing a Class 1 extinction event. Aboard the Prometheus, Dr. Elias Okafor studied the data Ixil had provided about the void gates with growing horror. The more he understood, the more terrifying their situation became. These entities, he said, looking up at Ixil who hovered nearby. They're not just alien. They're antithetical to our reality. A crude but accurate assessment, Ixil confirmed. They exist in dimensions where the fundamental laws of physics differ drastically from our own. Their very presence warps our reality around them. Admiral Rivera studied the tactical display showing the massive void entity at the edge of the system. It had grown larger but hadn't moved closer yet. Why isn't it attacking? He asked. It is still partially bound, Ixil explained. The gate has failed, but some of the dimensional anchors remain intact. It cannot fully manifest. Lieutenant Nadia Torres entered the command center, her face pale but determined. We've analyzed the energy patterns from the entity as you requested, Architect. The results are unusual. She brought up a holographic display showing wave patterns that seemed to shift and change even as they watched. These readings suggest the entity is trying to communicate, she continued. It's emitting structured patterns that repeat with variations similar to how we might modify a message to ensure understanding. Ixil moved closer to the display, its 4 eyes focusing intently. Impossible. The void entities are consciousnesses of pure consumption. They do not communicate. They devour. With respect, Nadia countered. The data suggests otherwise. Okafor joined them, examining the patterns. She's right. These aren't random fluctuations. There's clear intentionality here. Ixil's form rippled with what might have been discomfort. You misinterpret. These patterns are merely the result of the entity's attempt to fully manifest. I don't think so, Marcus said quietly. Lieutenant Torres has specialized in xenolinguistics. If she sees communication patterns, I trust her judgment. A tense silence fell as the ancient Noxtari regarded the humans. Finally, Ixil spoke again, its mental voice more measured. Perhaps things have changed in the void during our long sleep. I will consider your interpretation. The ship's AI interrupted with an urgent alert. Admiral, the Council fleet has regained power. They're forming into attack formations. Energy weapons charging, Marcus frowned. I had hoped for more time. We must wake the other architects, Ixil insisted. Only together can we face both the Council and the void entity. No, Marcus decided. First, we need to verify Lieutenant Torres's theory. If that entity is trying to communicate rather than attack, everything changes. Ixil's form darkened slightly. Admiral, you do not understand the danger. I understand that rushing to judgment has caused enough problems already, Marcus cut in. The Council races rebelled against the Noxtari because they disagreed with your methods. Perhaps it's time to try something new. Before Ixil could respond, another alert sounded. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Council reinforcements arriving in system. The tactical display updated to show over 500 new warships entering the system from multiple vectors. The Galactic Council had called in every available military asset. We're surrounded, Nadia reported grimly. And outnumbered 1,000 to 1, added Commander Jackson from his tactical station. Marcus turned to Ixil. Can you disable them all like before? No, Ixil admitted. The first wave was a focused effort. My power alone cannot affect so many vessels simultaneously. Then we need to talk, Marcus decided. Open a channel to Grand Admiral Telos. When the Telosian's face appeared on screen, his expression was grim but controlled. Admiral Rivera, you have one chance to surrender the Noxtari and withdraw your fleet. We need to share information, Marcus countered. The void entity at the edge of the system? It may not be what the Noxtari believe it is. What it is, Telos replied coldly, is a Class 1 extinction event. The Council archives contain references to these entities. They do not negotiate. They consume. The archives are wrong, Marcus insisted, or incomplete. We're detecting communication patterns. Enough, Telos interrupted. The Council has made its decision. The Noxtari's ancient negligence created this threat. We will not allow them to worsen it. The communication cut off abruptly. They're powering weapons, Nadia reported. All ships. They're targeting both us and the stellar construct. Ixil, Marcus turned to the ancient being. We need options. There is only one. Ixil replied. I must activate the emergency protocols to wake the remaining architects immediately. Without their stasis chambers? Okafor asked, alarmed. You said that could be dangerous. Less dangerous than annihilation, Ixil countered. Marcus studied the tactical display, mind racing through scenarios. None looked promising. Do it, he finally ordered. Wake them. Ixil moved to the center of the command center, its form beginning to glow with inner light. It raised its arms and a wave of energy pulsed outward from its body, passing through the ship and continuing into space. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then one by one, 12 points of brilliant light appeared throughout the galaxy on their long-range sensors. The architects awaken, Ixil said, its mental voice suddenly stronger, connected to a chorus of others. They come. The Council fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams converged on the Prometheus and the stellar construct. At the last possible instant, a shimmering barrier appeared around both, absorbing the attacks completely. What just happened? Marcus demanded. My brethren have extended their protection, Ixil explained. Even from across the galaxy, their power reaches us. On the tactical display, the void entity suddenly moved, surging forward toward the gathered fleets. It's attacking, Jackson shouted. No, Nadia countered, studying her readings. It's responding. The energy from the weapons fire attracted its attention. The void entity bypassed the human vessels entirely, heading straight for the Council fleet. Ships in its path simply ceased to exist and not destroyed but erased as if they had never been. We have to stop it, Marcus decided. Whatever it is, we can't let it destroy the Council fleet. We cannot stop a fully manifested void entity, Ixil insisted. Only contain it. Dr. Okafor, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly straightened. Wait, I've been reviewing the Noxtari records about the void entities. There's something strange. He brought up ancient text on a nearby display. These records are fragmentary, but they suggest the entities weren't always hostile. The early encounters were different. Different how? Marcus pressed. They're described as seekers and travelers, not destroyers, Okafor explained. It's only in later records that they're portrayed as threats. All eyes turned to Ixiel, whose form had gone very still. Is this true? Marcus asked quietly. After a long pause, Ixiel's mental voice returned, subdued. The first encounters were not peaceful. We learned much from the void entities, but as more crossed over, some began to change, to hunger. We had no choice but to seal the gates. You imprisoned them all, Nadia realized. Even the peaceful ones. Humanity repays a debt, and the entire galaxy trembles in Fear Part 4. The choice. The architect's vessel connected to the Prometheus with a sound like distant thunder. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood at the airlock, flanked by Dr. Elias Okafor and a visibly uncomfortable Ixiel. The ancient Noxtari's translucent form had darkened, a sign of agitation that Marcus had quickly learned to recognize. They will not understand your defiance, Ixiel warned, mental voice tight with tension. The High Architects do not compromise. Then they'll have to learn, Marcus replied calmly. Humanity wasn't designed to be a weapon or a tool. Whatever genetic modifications you made, you also gave us free will. The airlock cycled open. 3 Noxtari entered, each taller than Ixiel and radiating an almost painful intensity. Their four-eyed gazes swept the reception area, settling on Marcus with unnerving focus. The caretaker species, one said, its mental voice like rolling thunder compared to Ixiel's whisper. You have done well to awaken our kindred. Now you must complete your purpose. Marcus stepped forward, meeting the alien gaze directly. High Architects, I am Admiral Marcus Rivera of United Earth. We welcome you back to the galaxy, but we must discuss the situation fully before any action is taken. The lead architect tilted its elongated head. Discuss? There is nothing to discuss. The void breach must be sealed. The entity must be contained. This is your designed purpose. With respect, Marcus countered, we believe the situation is more complex than your records indicate. The void entity appears to be attempting communication, not destruction. The 3 architects exchanged a silent communication, their forms shifting in patterns too subtle for human eyes to fully comprehend. Ixiel, the lead architect, addressed its kindred. Explain this aberration in the caretaker's behavior. Ixiel moved forward reluctantly. The humans have evolved beyond our original design parameters. They exhibit independent judgment and moral considerations. Unfortunate but irrelevant, the second architect dismissed. The genetic keys remain functional. They will perform their task regardless of their opinions. Marcus felt a chill at those words. What exactly does that mean? Dr. Okafor stepped forward, his scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming his awe. You're saying the genetic modifications you made to humanity weren't just to help us find you? They were to make us capable of sealing the gates physically? Precisely, the third architect confirmed. Your neural pathways contain specific sequences that, when properly stimulated, can generate the necessary energy patterns to repair and strengthen the dimensional barriers. And how exactly would these pathways be stimulated? Marcus asked, though he suspected the answer. The lead architect regarded him impassively. The process requires the sacrifice of approximately 1 million genetically suitable humans. Their neural energy, properly harvested, will power the seals for another 50,000 years. A stunned silence fell over the human delegation. Even Ixiel seemed uncomfortable with the blunt disclosure. That was not how I would have explained it, Ixiel said finally. There is no gentle way to describe necessity, the lead architect replied. The caretakers were designed for this purpose. They should be honored to fulfill it. Marcus took a measured breath, keeping his voice steady despite his shock and anger. That will never happen. Humanity will not sacrifice 1 million lives, or not even to save the galaxy. You misunderstand, the second architect said. Your consent is not required. The activation sequence has already begun. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Lieutenant Nadia Torres monitored the meeting through the ship's security feed, her expression growing increasingly alarmed. Did you hear that? She asked Commander Jackson, who stood beside her. Every word. He replied grimly. Alert all Earth vessels. Prepare for emergency protocols. Before Nadia could respond, she doubled over in sudden pain. Around her, every human crew member did the same, clutching their heads as something awakened deep within their minds. Neural stimulation, she gasped, fighting to remain conscious. They're activating the genetic keys. Jackson, being half Martian and lacking the full complement of Earth-human DNA, was less affected. He managed to reach the communications console. All ships. The Noxtari are attempting neural manipulation of human crew. Implement countermeasure Omega. Throughout the Earth fleet, human crew members collapsed as the ancient programming buried in their genetic code activated. Non-human crew and AI systems took over critical functions as previously prepared emergency protocols engaged. Back at the airlock, Marcus fought against the invasion of his mind, remaining upright through sheer willpower. Stop this, he demanded, voice strained. This isn't repaying a debt, it's slavery. It is purpose, the lead architect corrected. Your kind exists because we created you for this moment. Dr. Okafor had fallen to his knees, blood trickling from his nose, but he managed to speak. Not true. We evolved beyond your design. A design flaw we are correcting, the third architect stated. Ixil suddenly moved between the high architects and the humans. This approach is flawed. The caretakers have developed too far. Forcing compliance will damage the neural patterns and weaken the seals. You've grown too attached to these creatures, Ixil, the lead architect admonished. They are tools, not allies. While this argument continued, Grand Admiral Talos observed from his flagship, still partially enveloped by the void entity. The Council fleet remained at high alert, but had ceased fire as the situation developed. Are you recording all this? Talos asked his intelligence officer. Yes, Admiral. The Noxtari communication is being broadcast across multiple frequencies. They appear unaware or unconcerned that we can monitor them. Tilo studied the tactical display showing the human crews suffering throughout their fleet. Despite centuries of conflict with Earth, he felt an unexpected stirring of sympathy. The archives were right about the Noxtari, he murmured. They view all other life as resources to be used. His second-in-command, the Valeran officer, looked troubled. Sir, if the Noxtari succeed in their plan, they'll have control of dimensional technology far beyond our comprehension, Talos finished. And they've already demonstrated their willingness to imprison entire civilizations they deem threatening. He made his decision. Contact the human vessel. Offer our assistance. On the Prometheus, Nadia received the unexpected communication through waves of neural pain. Commander, she managed, the Council fleet is hailing us. Jackson accepted the transmission, revealing Grand Admiral Telos's stern face. Human vessel, the massive alien began. We have monitored the Noxtari's intentions. The Council formally offers alliance against this threat. Why would you help us? Jackson demanded. Because the Noxtari threat now outweighs all others, Talos replied pragmatically. And because the void entity has not destroyed us despite ample opportunity. Jackson looked at Nadia, who nodded through her pain. Alliance accepted. But we need to stop whatever they're doing to our people. We have technology that might help, Talos offered. Neural dampening fields designed to block certain forms of psychic intrusion. If we can transmit the specifications, God, do it, Jackson ordered. As this conversation occurred, something unexpected happened near the airlock. The void entity, which had remained at a distance, suddenly extended a tendril of its impossible substance through space, passing through the hull of the Prometheus without damaging it. The dark shifting mass moved directly toward the confrontation between Marcus and the architects. The breach expands, the lead architect exclaimed. The containment is failing entirely. The void tendril stopped before Marcus, who was barely remaining conscious under the neural assault. It seemed to study him, then extended further, touching his forehead gently. Immediately the pain ceased. What? Marcus gasped, straightening as the neural manipulation was somehow blocked. The tendril withdrew from him and moved to Dr. Okafor, repeating the process. The scientist's eyes widened as his pain also vanished. It's helping us, he whispered. The void tendril then expanded, forming a barrier between the humans and the Noxtari architects. From within its shifting darkness, patterns emerged, the same communication signals Nadia had been working to decipher. The lead architect stepped back, its form pulsing with what might have been alarm. The entity seeks to prevent the sealing. It must be destroyed immediately. No, Marcus countered, his mind clear again. It's protecting us from you. That's not the action of a mindless destroyer. The void tendril expanded further, enveloping the entire area in its strange substance. Within this space, Marcus and Okafor found they could somehow breathe and move normally. Despite being essentially within the void entity itself, more patterns formed around them, are patterns that, amazingly, began to resolve into recognizable symbols. Not human language, but something interpretable. It's created a translation interface, Okafor realized. It's learned enough about our communication to bridge the gap. The first message appeared, floating in the darkness around them. Freedom, not destruction. Wrongfully imprisoned. Marcus looked at the patterns in awe. You're not here to consume our reality? Another message formed. Explore, learn, exchange. Some consumed a mistake, misunderstanding, all punished for actions of few. Nadia, freed from pain, watched the sensor readings in AMA. Humanity repays a debt, and the entire galaxy trembles in Fear Part 5. The Reckoning, the Grand Council chamber had been redesigned for today's historic gathering. The traditional concentric rings now included a new addition, a shimmering field of darkness that somehow didn't diminish the room's light. Within this field, patterns shifted and changed, a visual representation of the void entity's communications. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood at the central podium, flanked by representatives of powers that, only weeks ago, had been prepared to destroy each other. To his right stood Grand Admiral Talos, his massive frame resplendent in formal council military attire. To his left hovered Ixil, representing the 12 Noxtari architects who had reluctantly agreed to this unprecedented summit. And across from them all, contained within a specially designed interface field, pulsed the void entity formerly introduced as Nexus, the Explorer. 3 weeks ago, Marcus began, his voice carrying to all corners of the chamber. We faced extinction. Today, we stand on the brink of the greatest diplomatic achievement in galactic history. The assembled representatives on Sao, over 400 species from across the known galaxy Ao, watched in tense silence. Many had objected to the void entity's presence, but curiosity had overcome fear. This was, after all, first contact with an entirely different dimension. The concordat we are about to sign establishes the framework for interdimensional relations, Marcus continued. For the first time, controlled and regulated passage between our reality and the void will be possible. Dr. Elias Okafor, now officially appointed as humanity's lead xenodimensional researcher, activated the main display. A complex diagram appeared, showing the proposed system of regulated dimensional passages. The modified gates will allow vetted entities to traverse between dimensions under strict protocols, he explained. Unlike the previous system of total imprisonment, this approach recognizes the sentient rights of peaceful void entities while maintaining security for both realities. Nexus pulsed, its patterns translating through the new interface system Lieutenant Nadia Torres had helped develop. Gratitude. Understanding grows. Peaceful exchange benefits all. From the council representatives, a Maresian delegate rose, her crystalline form catching the light. How can we trust that other void entities will abide by these protocols? The historical record shows incidents of consumption and destruction. Marcus nodded acknowledgement of the concern. The same way we trust that not all biological entities are destroyers despite our own histories of war. Through communication, verification, and accountability, Ixil moved forward slightly. The Noxtari have contributed our dimensional technology to this framework. Each passage will include safeguards that can be activated instantly if violations occur. And humanity's role in all this? Asked another delegate, a gaseous being contained in a gravitational field. We are the mediators, Marcus replied simply. The genetic modifications the Noxtari gave our ancestors included unique neural patterns that allow us to comprehend both realities. We can perceive the void entity's communications more clearly than any other species. What he didn't mention was how the Noxtari had intended those same neural patterns to be harvested as energy for sealing the gates. Some revelations were still too explosive for this fragile piece. Grand Admiral Talos stepped forward, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. The Council has verified these claims through extensive testing. Humans possess a unique aptitude for interdimensional communication. It is unexpected but advantageous. Nexus pulsed again. Humans bridge understanding, designed as weapons, chose to be bridges. The lead Noxtari architect, who had remained silent until now, moved to join Ixil. Its taller form seemed to diminish the light around it. The Noxtari acknowledged that our original approach was flawed. It stated the admission clearly difficult. Isolation proved unsustainable. Communication may indeed provide a more stable solution. A ripple of surprise moved through the assembled representatives. For the ancient and proud Noxtari to admit error was unprecedented. The original data, the purpose for which humanity was designed, is thus transformed, the architect continued. Instead of maintaining barriers, humans will facilitate controlled passages. Marcus nodded, though the phrasing still troubled him. Humanity had not agreed to be the permanent interdimensional doorkeepers of the galaxy. But that was a negotiation for another day. Let us proceed to the formal signing, he suggested. As the various representatives approached the central platform, Dr. Okafor moved to stand beside Nadia Torres at the edge of the chamber. Did you ever imagine this when we first found that artifact? He asked quietly. Nadia shook her head, watching as Marcus represented humanity in the signing ceremony. Never. I thought we were making a simple archaeological discovery, not changing the fundamental structure of reality. And yet here we are. Okafor smiled. Makes you wonder what else the Noxtari didn't anticipate when they modified our ancestors. On the central platform, the signing procedure continued. Each representative added their mark to the concordat in their own way. Council delegates used traditional light pens. The Noxtari architect left a complex molecular pattern, and Nexus imprinted a void energy signature that seemed to sink into the document rather than rest upon it. When Marcus's turn came, he paused, looking out at the assembled galactic powers. With this signature, humanity formally accepts its place as mediators between realities. We do so not as payment of a debt, but as an evolution of purpose, not as tools designed by another intelligence, but as sentient beings making our own choice. He signed the document with a simple stylus, a deliberately humble instrument compared to the exotic methods of the other signatories. The symbolism wasn't lost on the observers. As the ceremony concluded, representatives began to mingle cautiously. Several approached the containment field housing Nexus, curiosity overcoming their initial fear. Noxtari delegates engaged in quiet conversation with council scientists. Centuries of mistrust wouldn't disappear overnight, but the foundation for a new relationship had been laid. Grand Admiral Talos approached Marcus as he stepped down from the platform. A remarkable achievement, Admiral Rivera, though I suspect the real work begins now. It always does, Marcus agreed. Peace is harder than war. Indeed. The massive alien studied him thoughtfully. The Council has existed for 12,000 years. In all that time, we never attempted communication with the void entities. We simply accepted the Noxtari's assessment that they were mindless consumers. Fear makes for poor diplomacy, Marcus observed, as does arrogance. Talos inclined his head slightly. Humanity has taught both the Council and the Noxtari a valuable lesson. One I suspect neither of us will forget soon. As Talos moved away to join his delegation, Ixil approached. The ancient being seemed somehow diminished since the arrival of its brethren, but its mental voice remained clear. The High Architects have accepted the Concordat, but they remain concerned, Ixil informed him. They believe humanity has exceeded its design parameters in ways that may prove unpredictable. That's the thing about creating sentient life, Marcus replied. It tends to make its own choices. Indeed. A ripple passed through Ixil's translucent formao, something close to amusement. Perhaps that was our greatest miscalculation. We designed humans to be both intelligent and adaptable, then expected you to follow predetermined paths. A fundamental contradiction, Marcus agreed. The other architects have decided to return to stasis, Ixil continued. They find this new galaxy disorienting, too changed from their time. I, however, will remain awake to observe the implementation of the Concordat. And to keep an eye on your creations? Marcus asked with a slight smile. To learn from them, Ixil corrected. The student has, in many ways, surpassed the teacher. Before Marcus could respond, an alert chimed softly from his neural link. Nadia's voice came through, tense with urgency. Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy fluctuations from the 7th quadrant. It appears another void entity is attempting to cross over. Marcus exchanged a glance with Ixil. Already, the new passage system isn't fully implemented yet. Perhaps news of Nexus's successful communication has spread within the void dimension, Ixil suggested. Or perhaps this is our first test, Marcus replied grimly. He raised his voice to address the chamber. Attention all delegates. We have a situation developing in the 7th quadrant. It appears another void entity is emerging. The chamber erupted in alarmed murmurs. The lead architect immediately moved to confront Marcus. This proves the folly of your approach. The barriers weaken and more entities sense the opportunity. Or they sense the opportunity for communication rather than imprisonment. Marcus countered. He turned to where Nexus pulsed in its containment field. Can you communicate with this new entity? Nexus's patterns shifted rapidly. Attempting contact. Unfamiliar signature. Caution advised. Grand Admiral Telos was already coordinating with his command staff. Council defensive fleet moving to the quadrant. Containment protocols activating. No offensive action, Marcus insisted. Observation and containment only until we determine intent. The main display shifted to show the distant sector where space itself appeared to be tearing open. The void breach was smaller than Nexus's had been, but growing steadily.